Hello viewers, this is ETV Language. I'm Daniel Kasahun. In this edition, we discuss hunger and related issues. To brief us on the matter, here with me is David Pierre. He is coordinator for Eastern Africa of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. He is also representative to the African Union and the UNSA. Welcome to the studio, sir.
It is good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Apparently, hunger is a daily reality for 1 billion people, despite efforts by different actors. Many argue that more than 6 decades after the technological discoveries that led to the Green Revolution aimed at ending world hunger, regular food shortage, malnutrition still plague vast strips of the world. Why the world is unable to curb the problem, and what should be done?
You know, it is really unfortunate that despite best efforts by the global citizenry, the governments, the United Nations included, that hunger, in fact, is still such a big problem in the world. The worst part is that, in fact, the situation is getting worse, not better. So it is that our latest, FAO's latest study shows that last year there were 121 million hungry people in the world. And that is up from about 815 million people 3 years ago. I think the world was making a lot of progress since the 60s in trying to reduce hunger. But for some reason, since 2015, this effort has reversed. There are a number of factors of why this is happening. I think one of the biggest reasons is climate change. The world is now facing very high temperatures, and the seasons that people used to when growing crops or raising livestock are no longer the same. Rains come late, sometimes they come even earlier. The distribution of rainfall across the seasons is usually very, very bad. Now, even though we say that there has been a different, that the world has still a lot of hungry people, we should take also into consideration the fact that the world population, meanwhile, has been increasing. So that also factors into the number of people that continue to be hungry. So climate change, population growth in some areas, if it is not matched by increase in productivity of agriculture, then the third is political will. I think heads of state and government are quick to agree to make certain decisions, but implementation of those decisions that they themselves have made are rarely matched at country level. So we do hope that what they agree at global level or at continental level, for example, in Africa, is actually implemented at local, at country level.
I'm asking you how FAO defines hunger. Is it only the absence of food, or does it include some other factors?
It's the absence of food, but also we include other factors, including whether there's stability across the year with respect to availability of food, whether people can access the food if they do not grow the food themselves. For example, many people in urban areas do not grow the food themselves, but whether they have the means to access the food. So the calculation is complex, but it does include whether food is available in a particular area or in a particular country, whether it can be imported or bought, what is the balance sheet of the food, not only in a particular country but in a particular household. and how safe that food is. Also, what are the nutritional content of the food in terms of the quality of what is in the food that they eat, because we aim at having balanced diets for normal growth, particularly for young children.
Earlier you mentioned me some challenges that cause hunger.
Mm-hmm.
As UNFAO, what are the major activities you are undertaking in order to curb this problem?
Look, the first thing is that we do make assessments of what the situation is in the world and in different parts of the world. For example, the number that we have right now of the number of hungry people, it is measured by FAO, and this is communicated worldwide. So we have the opportunity to meet with governments at highest level to inform of the problem. This is the first thing that we do. We also have, using our convening power, whether it's at our headquarters in Rome or working with like-minded institutions, including the African Union, we do inform of what the current situation is. Then the second thing is we do support the governments, the regional economic communities, as well as continental bodies in preparing policy that can help reduce that hunger. And then we also go into looking at specific projects that can help the countries reduce hunger. So it is, for example, we work on transboundary issues. For example, more recently, the crop pest, the livestock diseases. FAO was one of the main organizations in eradicating rinderpest, for example, in the world. This, we worked with the countries, with the governments of those countries, as well as their continental bodies, to make sure that we do this. Right now, we're on a campaign to help eradicate pest de petit ruminant, which affects sheep and goats and other small ruminants. That's the third element. We have projects that help directly the countries resolve the issues. But then we are also, the fourth element is for us to help build resilience in the communities, because floods as well as droughts now are coming more and more often because of the climate change. Pests and diseases are more often and more frequent, and therefore we try to help countries as well as their communities to build resilience. Now, one thing I can say about resilience is that I'm proud to say that despite huge problems that we have right now, droughts and floods and so on, the world is now in a better position to withstand some of these shocks. And I think I would like to say thanks to the work that the governments and its partners, including the UN, including us, have done to make the people more resilient.
Yes, as you mentioned it, the problem is huge in Eastern Africa.
Yes.
The place where you are coordinating and you are responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
What are your major interventions in order to curb this problem? Recently, Ethiopia has declared that it has 8.3 million affected people in drought and...
Yes.
So how are you...
Unfortunately, this climate change is causing a lot of problems. You know, Africa as a whole has about 256 million people that are hungry, which is about 20% of the global. Okay, Eastern Africa, the 9 or 10 countries in Eastern Africa alone, comprise of about half of the 256 million that are in Africa.
So progress persistent in this region.
I think the region has had a lot of effects of climate change, floods and droughts. They are more frequent. Not only they are more frequent, they are heavier. Okay, they tend to be more intense every time. Okay, so despite the efforts that are made by governments, there's still a huge problem. Then it is also a region that has been characterized by conflict for a long time, and hunger and conflict are intrinsically linked. Where there's conflict, of course, there's going to be no possibility of people cultivating or raising livestock. Some of this conflict actually comes from the very same issues of climate change. When there's a drought, for example, pastoralists move their livestock to places where there is grass, there's feed, and so on, and cause tensions. So some of these conflicts actually start from there. So there's a lot of relationship between conflict and hunger. So Eastern Africa has been, I think, a little bit unfortunate with respect to the hunger issue, but there is also a big population increase. Yeah, in Eastern Africa. In terms of Africa-wide, I think the biggest population increases are actually in Eastern Africa. So this population increase masks the big progress that the countries themselves have made in trying to reduce hunger, because as the population increases, unless you increase productivity very much, then it seems as if you're not doing much. But there are countries in Eastern Africa that I think have made a lot of progress, and Ethiopia is one. Since 2005, Ethiopia has managed to reduce hunger from about 30 million to about 21 million now. And this despite the fact that the population of Ethiopia has increased immensely during this particular period.
Well, let me get back to the question.
Yeah.
Would you mind further elaborating the major interventions that you are undertaking in this sub-region?
So in this particular sub-region, we are of course, because it is so prone to droughts, floods, and pests and diseases, we are supporting in resilience building. Okay, at country level, as well as at regional level. So we work with IGAD, for example. We work with the Eastern African Community. We're also very much involved in the Great Lakes region to make sure that the cross-border.
You may respond to me with this question. How FAO is helping communities build resilience?
Okay. What we're doing is, first of all, is to try to provide them with the tools that can make them increase their incomes. So when they increase incomes, for example, we provide them, when there's been a drought or floods or things like this, we do provide seeds, sometimes fertilizers and so on, so that they can grow their crops better after the floods or after the droughts. So this empowers them to become more resilient to future shocks, because incomes increase, their own food production at household level increases. This is one way. Second is we respond very quickly. When there is a problem, we do respond very quickly. We have response mechanisms to support communities fairly quickly.
What are you doing now, for example, in Ethiopia?
Okay.
The country that declared 8.3 million people in need. What's the intervention? Is there any intervention you are making now?
Oh, in Ethiopia we're doing a lot of work, including natural resource management, because of the population increase, because of the climate change. Some of the lands are degraded, for example. So we're restoring. We're trying to restore some of the lands that were degraded by afforestation in some areas, but we are also immediately supporting communities that have lost everything by providing them the tools, whether it's mechanization, whether it's the seeds, and so on, so that they can grow their own food. But we are also supporting very much the government of Ethiopia in its development of agro-industrial parks. That is aimed not only at helping the people now, but helping people in the future.
How about FAO's work to reduce farmers and herders' vulnerability to the impacts of climate change in East Africa? Already you have touched upon. Maybe.
Yes. I've touched upon some of the work that we do. For example, restoring lands through afforestation is one way of making sure that the soils are good enough to grow crops, but they are also good enough to produce the feed for the livestock. But increasingly, we are also now working with the peace and security arms of the United Nations as well as the African Union, because as I said at the beginning, there is a very close relationship between hunger and conflict. So FAO is now suddenly also realizing that it is very important that we work with the peace and security organs. We are also doing that to help reduce migration out of the rural areas that sometimes causes social tensions in urban areas and sometimes beyond. So our work is focused on many facets of the economic field, but we are also trying to increase productivity at farm level, whether it's crops or whether it's livestock. But we are also, as I said, trying to make sure that climate change is put at bay. And we're not only working on the land, we are also working on the sea, because we are also responsible as an organization for the blue economy, because fisheries in many places is a very important source of living. So we are also working with the sea. I know that Ethiopia is landlocked, but it has got lakes, and there are a lot of relationship with your neighbors that have the seas.
Last time you had a conference here at the headquarters of the African Union, FAO, WHO, and the African Union. And that conference you prioritized food safety. And what has it produced, the conference, and why you focused on food safety in the conference?
You know, it was the very first international conference on food safety that was ever held. Okay, and this is because there is no food security without food safety. Okay, food has to be safe, because food infected with bacteria or viruses or toxins and so on causes a lot of damage, causes death to people, but also debilitates. If it doesn't kill them, it debilitates them. So food safety is of paramount importance to ensure that countries are food secure. So this is why we came together, FAO, WHO, as well as the African Union, to co-organize this huge international conference that drew more than 130 countries and more than 700 participants, to also share experiences on what the countries are doing, at what level they are with regard to putting in place institutions that ensure that the food that people eat in their countries is safe.
You have bold desire to end hunger from this world.
Yes.
Is it possible to end hunger from this world?
Absolutely.
How do you think that you're strategizing to end hunger from the world?
You know, the first thing I think I should say is that it is absolutely possible to end hunger in this generation. Okay. there are a lot of stories, good stories of what has happened in many countries with regard to success in reducing or ending hunger completely. So it is possible. FAO is completely convinced that this is possible. First is the climate, is the political will. I think if the political will is there, hunger can be reduced. And we have seen that where heads of state or heads of government have taken bold steps themselves to ensure that there is as little hunger in their countries as possible, things have happened. Okay, Ethiopia is an example. Rwanda is an example. We have not gone to zero, but we are moving in that direction. So there are many countries where there is progress. So political will is particularly important. And secondly, I think, and we are trying to sensitize, I think, the heads of state and government as well as other politicians to make sure that to see how this is important. The second way we do this is through working with parliamentarians. Okay, we have a meeting in Arusha coming up next month, where all Eastern African parliamentarians that deal with issues of hunger and food security will meet, because parliamentarians play a very important role in deciding on what budget goes to where. Okay, and it is important that we advocate for the parliamentarians to work in reducing hunger and malnutrition. So the budgets that are put in agriculture are extremely important to support this objective of zero hunger. But then we are also working, as I said, with at all levels. At government level, we are also working with communities so that progress is also being made there. And then the households will become more food secure.
You have taken a long time. The world has taken almost 6 decades in the fight against this problem, hunger. Why all this much time? And the problem is increasing. The time is also increasing. Too much time taken to tackle the problem. Do you have any new strategy to curb the problem, or are you maintaining the same interventions?
No. FAO, like all other UN agencies, are also using different strategies to support the objective of reduction of hunger. I think the first framework that I think is extremely important for me to mention is the Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals that the world agreed in 2015, these are a new way of doing things completely for the UN as well as for the countries. Because first, it's the first time that all countries in the world are party to this. At first, it used to be only developing countries. Now, also developed countries are part of it. So now we're also looking at hunger not only in developing countries. We're now also looking at hunger even in developed countries. Okay, that is one thing. FAO has a new strategic framework, which is now aligned to this Sustainable Development Goal framework, to make sure that we are all in tandem. The third is the UN reform. There is an ongoing UN reform that makes us, okay, FAO is the lead with regard to ending hunger, but there are many other actors that are working with us in that direction so that we can coordinate better. Our programming is better synchronized to support the countries. So at country level, at regional level, at continental level, as well as at global level, we are now working in more synchronized manner. Does this solve the problem completely? No. That is why I said that it is important that we bring the political will together with us, because if If there's no political will, it's not going to happen. If you've got war and conflict, it's never going to happen. And these are the things that have made it impossible for us to reach the goal by now. But I think now I'm beginning to sense that there is more understanding that for many governments, that if you do not reduce hunger, you're not going to develop as fast as you would have liked, because it's the very basic human right to reduce hunger. So people, then you enrich and the people as well as school children and so on, so that you build a wonderful future for them, for their communities, and so on. So I think heads of state are realizing this. That's why Africa, as a continent, decided that they're going to reduce hunger by 2025. 5 years later, 5 years before the rest of the world. Will they do it? Yes. If they get committed to really do it and work at it. I think the African Continental Free Trade Area provides a great opportunity for this to happen. So we do hope really that with everything that they've put in place, if they can implement it, there's no reason. The sky is the limit.
That's nice. Do you think that the world is conducive for you to achieve this goal?
I think the world is evolving all the time, and we have to evolve with the world. We are an intergovernmental organization, so we work based on the goals that the governmental institutions themselves have set. Okay, so we work with them. I think, in my view, the world is quite conducive for us to work. They give us the room, they give us the resources for us to support them achieve whatever objectives they themselves have set.
Well, dear viewers, that wraps up the program in this edition. That was Mr. David Pierre. He is coordinator for Eastern Africa of the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, and he is also representative to the African Union and the UNECA. Thank you very much for your time again. Well, dear viewers, that wraps up the program in this edition. Many thanks for watching us on ETV Language. Next time, we'll see you with yet another issue of the program. Till then, bye-bye.